Welcome back to another episode of With a Grain of Salt. I'm your host, Isaiah Salter, and I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in for yet another week. Another week, another With a Grain of Salt podcast episode, or WAGOS. You know, I know a lot of people refer to it as WAGOS, and some people say With a Grain of Salt. It don't matter. As long as you're part of the community, that's all we care about. But this week's episode is going to be on how your self-story creates your reality. Right? That's the title of this week's episode. Your self-story creates your reality. Learning how to shift the narrative for alignment. We have to shift the internal narrative into a place of alignment and congruency with where we're trying to go and who we're trying to become. Because what we tell ourselves and the story that we allow to dictate our lives literally creates how we experience this reality. It literally creates our reality. So that's what this week is on. And if you follow me on Instagram and you saw my Instagram story, you got a little sneak peek into the intro that I am about to say right now. So if you saw that, then you've read what I'm about to say prior to me saying it. So that was a little sneak peek for you. I think I posted that. That was Saturday. Yeah, that was yesterday. What am I talking about? That was yesterday. I was working on the script last night for doing it this morning. So I decided to put the intro on there and see if anybody could pick it up while I read it. Or, yeah, I don't know. But I digress. Anyway, let's get into this week's episode. Most of us move through life thinking reality is something that happens to us, as if we're just reacting to whatever shows up. But the truth is we are constantly creating the world we step into through our beliefs, our emotions, our habits, and the story we tell ourselves about who we are. All of those things attract experiences that match that energy that we are living in. Today's episode is about understanding how powerful you actually are, how the invisible parts of you, your thoughts, your emotional patterns, your self-story, are shaping the visible parts of your life. And once you understand that and have the awareness on it, then from that place, we could start to live by creation, not by chance. So with that being said, let's dive in. Point number 1, your self-story is the blueprint for your reality. Your self-story is the blueprint for your reality. Every person lives inside a story about themselves, shaped from childhood, past experiences, cultural expectations, and old emotional patterns. This story becomes the lens through which you interpret everything. This story, right, this self-story that has been shaped from childhood, past experiences, cultural expectations, and old emotional patterns, this story literally becomes the lens through which you interpret everything. This is why it's so important. This story creates our personality, which creates our personal reality. We've talked about this many times before, especially surrounding Dr. Joe Dispenza. You guys know I love his work, and I love, his message. And he talks about that all the time. Our personality creates our personal reality. Our personality is how we think, how we feel, and how we act on an everyday basis. And those three things literally create a vibration and a frequency that attract things into our life from that energy that we are cultivating. And on top of that, those three things, how you think, how you feel, and how you act, literally influence how you interpret what you go through, right? So a lot of people create a lot of unneeded suffering because they are looking through a very limited lens, which is contingent on the personality that they've created, the self-story that is running their lives. So your personality creates your personal reality, which means who you are being internally determines the life you repeatedly create and experience externally. If your internal narrator is still speaking from wounds, insecurities, or outdated identities, the world reflects that version of you back, no matter how much you try to think positive. This is huge. Your self-story determines your worldview. If your story says, I always mess things up, or I'm not good enough, your brain goes into every situation expecting proof of that. We're just going to stop there before we even finish. If your self-story internally, and a lot of times, this is the tough part about our self-story. A lot of it is subconscious, right? We don't even realize that this is the narration going on in driving our vehicle. We don't even realize that this is the self-story that we're allowing to dictate how we're moving and how we're showing up and experiencing reality. So when we get caught up into all of these different type of situations and predicaments, and we wonder why they always end up this way, or we always, mess up these type of things, or we always get into these type of situations, or whatever it may be, we just think that's just chance, or that's just the way things are, or that's just luck. But we never look at, is there something going on within myself that is attracting these type of experiences, people, situations into my life? Is there something going on within myself to where I'm not even able to see the good parts of each situation because I'm looking through a very limited lens? And why am I looking through that lens? This is the importance of questioning yourself. You're not questioning yourself from a place of judgment, from a place of condemnation. You're questioning yourself from a place of curiosity and wanting to learn more about you. So as you start to ask these questions, you're going to start to become aware of certain things that you weren't aware of before just because you decided to start asking those questions, right? So the first thing is, let's become aware. Let's start looking at, what are we getting back in our life? What relationships are we cultivating? How are we showing up and moving into situations and experiences? Let's become aware of these things. And then if there's certain things that we don't really align with, let's start to question them. I don't really align with this type of relationship, yet I keep getting involved with these type of people. Why? Let's just do that. Why? We're not going to beat ourselves down, right? We're not going to judge ourselves, but we're going to ask why from a place of curiosity so that we can learn more and understand ourselves better, because from that place of understanding, we can operate in this world in a more authentic and aligned way. Come on. So if your story says I always mess things up, or I'm not good enough, your brain goes into every situation expecting proof of that. If your internal if your internal story is I always mess things up, or I'm not good enough, your brain literally goes into every situation expecting that. So it's like you will literally filter out anything that is not a match with that self-story, right? So anything that could show you that you actually are good enough, or you don't always mess things up, you're not even able to see, because your brain is literally filtering out everything outside of what is true for you. And what is true for you is that self-story, right? So we need to be able to shift that narrative. Your self-story, right? It literally causes you to interpret neutral moments as losses, interpret opportunities as risk, and challenges as confirmation of your limitation. The story becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because your brain filters out anything that contradicts it. What's his name? Viktor Frankl, I want to say. Or no, it was Carl Jung. He said, if you don't make the unconscious conscious, it will drive your life and you will call it fate. I've mentioned that quote on the podcast before. If you don't make the unconscious conscious, it will drive your life and you'll just call it fate. So many people, you'll hear it all the time. Oh, that's just my luck. Oh, it's just the way it is. Things never go my way. It's like, hold up. Why are we accepting that as true? And the more you accept it and the more you live in it, the more it's going to manifest in your life. The more your brain is going to keep on filtering out things that contradict that self-story, right? This is the importance of becoming aware of your self-story. What is going on within yourself? What is that internal conversation like every single day? I experienced this the most, one in my life, but also with my little sister. My little sister is 19, sophomore in college. I love that woman to death. Me and her have such a strong bond, and we've grown so much together these last couple of years. But she talks to me all the time about how, it goes to show, with the society we live in, and I know it's really tough with social media and all of these external expectations, especially as a girl in the society. But she talks about all the time how, that internal dialogue with herself can sometimes be so demeaning and so limiting, and hearing that is so eye-opening, especially from people where it's like, why are you even telling yourself that, right? Like my little sister, like, if she ever is like, oh, I don't like the way I look, or I'm like, you are a beautiful woman. Like, why would you tell yourself that, right? And that just goes to show the power that we have, the power that our self-stories have over our lives. It literally, if your self-story is limiting, if it's negative, if it's, self-judging, your brain is going to filter out everything that contradicts that. So you are only going to be seeing things in your life that affirm that self-story. So you're going to keep getting in situations where it shows you that you don't have a high level of self-worth. You're going to keep getting involved with people who don't value you in the way that you deserve to be valued, because your self-story is, I don't even deserve true love, or I'm not even worthy of this type of love, right? I'm not even worthy of success. I'm not even worthy of receiving these things. So many people believe that subconsciously, right? There's a lot of us where you may hear that and be like, nah, there's no way I believe that. But when you really start to take a step back and sit with yourself and analyze that internal dialogue and become aware of those unconscious, subconscious beliefs and programming, it really will shake your world. For me, I was like, stuff is still coming out till this day. Till this day, stuff is still coming out for me where I'm like, bro, I did not know that was in there. I did not know that was just underlying, you know what I mean? And so it's so important to become aware of these things because they hold so much weight, right? You are a creator. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. You have so much power within yourself. If that power is not being used intentionally, with awareness, then it can be used for our detriment without us even realizing it. Because the power is being used. You have the power within you. The power is being used. The question is it being used to help uplift you, or is it being used to keep you stuck and stagnant? And that's where we have to have a conversation with ourselves and get clear on that self-story. And we're going to do that together with a grain of salt. Let's keep going. And before we move on to the next insight, I put a note down for this, the importance of neutrality, right? When we talk about you interpret neutral moments as losses or all of these things are as negative, the importance of going into every situation from a neutral standpoint. It's so important to do that. Neutrality is one of the most underrated forms of emotional mastery. When something happens, the event itself isn't good or bad. It's the meaning we attach to it that creates our suffering or our peace. This is huge. The event itself is neutral, right? We experience things all the time as human beings. These things that we experience are neutral. It's the meaning we attach to it that creates either our suffering or our peace. This is so true. If you view a loss as the worst thing ever and you fight the loss and you're like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I can't believe I'm losing this thing or this person, whatever it may be. You're creating suffering because of the meaning you've attached to that situation is limiting. On the contrary, if you flip it, if you view loss as letting go to create space, more space for newer and aligned things to come in, right? Loss as a part of growth, right? If you view it through that lens, it cultivates peace. It doesn't add suffering to your life, right? Same exact situation, but the two people, they tied a different meaning to it, right? This goes to perspective, right? The perspective in which you view things literally dictates how you experience it. So it's so important, especially in relationships. So many people don't realize that this is what causes so much disconnect in relationships. We go into relationships, and rather than being neutral and taking this person for who they are, we are looking at them through a lens in which we already have expectations of what this person should be doing, how they should be doing, and how whatever it is. So anything outside of that creates dissonance rather than just accepting this person for who they are and then operating from that place. Then you can actually know, all right, is this relationship aligned or do I need to step away from it? It gives you the ability to actually make an aligned decision. But the moment you go in with expectations or a clouded lens because you're bringing in old emotional baggage or past experiences into this relationship, you're already setting yourself up for failure, because now you're not really present with who this person actually is. You're viewing them through a lens that has been cultivated from past experiences. So you're not even able to see who this person actually is because your lens is clouded. So we need to become aware that our lens is clouded, take a step back, and start to work with ourselves. Start to take a wipe and wipe the lens, right? Start to take a wipe and wipe the lens. Neutrality keeps us, it says neutrality creates space between the moment and the story we want to project onto it. This is huge. Neutrality creates space between the moment and the story we want to project onto it. A lot of times when we don't create that space for, taking a step back and actually viewing the situation as neutral and seeing what it is, we project, right? We project a certain story onto this thing, and now it becomes something totally different than what it actually is, right? So neutrality, it helps us to stay grounded, clear, and in our power. Instead of reacting from old wounds and old patterns, neutrality lets us choose a response that aligns with who we're becoming. When we stop taking everything personally and start seeing life as neutral, you stop recreating your past and start creating from intention. Neutrality doesn't make you numb, it makes you free. Come on, man. And going into situations as neutral, it doesn't mean you're not feeling anything. It doesn't mean that, you're suppressing certain things. Nah, it's not that. It's literally having the awareness that, listen, before I'm so quick to judge this situation or this person as this or as that, let me take a step back, approach this from a neutral standpoint, and take whatever is here. Take it with a grain of salt. That's literally what taking things with a grain of salt is about going into situations with a neutral perspective, understanding that something that you used to view as a burden can actually end up being a blessing with a simple perspective shift, right? The moment you change your lens, that thing changed. It says your body becomes addicted to the emotional signature of your story, whether that's stress, disappointment, or unworthiness. So even when you try to change your life, your body unconsciously pulls you back into situations that recreate the same feelings. Not because you're broken, but because your nervous system craves what's familiar. We spoke about this, I think it was last episode, but you know how our ego, our nervous system, our brain, it craves familiarity. It likes predictability. You got to understand something. This is so profound. Your body becomes addicted to the emotional signature of your story. So if your self-story is very limiting, it's not expansive, right? It hinders your growth, right? It's a very contractive story. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not lovable, whatever it may be. I'm never going to amount to nothing. I'm not blessed. These internal stories that we have, right? That internal story creates an emotional signature, right? So when we have that internal story, it also comes with certain emotions that our body ties to that story. So when our internal dialogue is I'm not worthy, the emotion that's tied to that is not peace, it's not clarity, it's not expansiveness. It's usually disappointment, stress, unworthiness, shame, guilt, like those type of things. So if our internal story is very limiting, that means that we're operating on very limiting emotions on an everyday basis. Here's the really, really, really tough part about that. Your body literally becomes addicted to the emotional signature of your story. There's an emotional baseline that we all have. Our body literally craves predictability. It creates familiar territory. So whatever emotions we have been operating on majority of the time, that creates an emotional baseline. You've done it. You've been feeling that emotion so many times. You've been feeling those feelings so many times that it literally gets programmed into your body. So literally your body can move in a way without you even needing to think, because it's programmed and conditioned, right? That's why change can feel so hard, because you're going against so much conditioning and programming of years and years and years, right? Your body is used to a certain way of feeling, a certain way of behaving, a certain way of moving. And when you finally get to a place where you're like, I don't like this way, right? This way is not aligned with where I'm trying to go. To shift that, it's going to be friction, restriction, like we've talked about. You're going against the grain. You're going against the programming. So this is what makes change so difficult at first. When you want to change, especially when it comes to your self-story, when you want to shift your self-story, right? So you want to start thinking differently. You want to start saying more positive and aligned and uplifting things to yourself. At first, there's going to be a disconnect because in your body, right? So understand this. Thoughts are the language of your mind. Emotions are the language of your body, right? Thoughts are the language of your mind. Emotions are the language of your body. So when you start thinking different, right? You want to think positive and you want to start positive self-talk, those type of things. That can infiltrate your mind, right? You can conceptualize that in your mind, but it's not infiltrating your body because the thing that infiltrates your body is an emotion, right? That's why a thought alone doesn't change your life, right? But also on the same side, it's not just about focusing on your emotions. We need to create coherence between how we're thinking and how we're feeling. But at first, you're going to have to learn how to think greater than how you feel, because the moment you want to shift that internal narrative, that internal story, you're going to start thinking differently, but your body is still programmed off of that emotional signature that's aligned with the story. So literally, because your body becomes addicted to that emotional signature, it's going to do everything in its power to pull you back into that. So when you want to start thinking differently, thinking more positive, and doing different things, it's not going to feel the best at first. It's actually going to feel very, very like disconnected, like something's off. Like I'm thinking of being a better version of myself, but I'm feeling shame. I'm feeling guilt. I'm feeling lack, right? And usually because the emotion is so strong, the moment we feel guilt, shame, lack, or unworthiness, it deletes the positive thought in a whole, and then we resort back to thinking how we were. So I know that was a lot, right? But I say all that to say it's just about understanding that, okay, when I want to start thinking differently, when I want to start shifting that internal dialogue, I got to understand that that's part one of a multi-step process. And with that, my body is still conditioned emotionally to that past story. So there is going to be some disconnect at the beginning, but I need to trust in the process. Come on. And the more you do that, and the more you keep on leaning more into the aligned self-story, the more you're going to, over time, teach your body a new emotional signature. And then when you create that coherence, it's a wrap. And we literally have a point about that coming up. So I'll save what I have to say until we get to that point. An analogy. Your self-story is like a thermostat in a house. We've used the thermostat analogy before, but it's just such a good analogy. Your self-story is like a thermostat in a house. Even if you open all the windows and try to let in fresh air, the thermostat automatically pulls the temperature back to whatever it's been set to. So your old emotions, stress, unworthiness, chaos, disappointment, that creates an internal set point for your body. So even when you try to rise into a new version of yourself, your internal thermostat quietly activates and brings you back to the emotional temperature it's used to. To change your life, you don't just open the windows. You have to reset the thermostat. This is that internal work we talk about. Yes, we need to start thinking differently, but on top of thinking differently, we need to start feeling differently. This is the importance of having grounding practices, meditation, sitting with yourself, going for a walk, learning how to regulate your emotional state and embody elevated emotions, right? These things aren't just going to happen. This is another tough part of the stick, but not really, because I'll get to that. It's very tough because these things aren't just going to happen. You're not just going to wake up one day and be like, oh, now I'm in a state of gratitude, peace, clarity, and I've done nothing different. No, it's going to take real inner work. But the reason it's so beautiful is because the more you do that inner work, the more you are going to feel empowered. This is where empowerment comes from. This is where confidence comes from. This is where expansiveness comes from. This is where your ability to show up in an authentic way comes from. It comes from the work you are doing internally, right? So yes, at first, especially, it's hard and it's tough and there's a lot on your shoulders, but understand the reason it feels so heavy is because the more you start to lean into it, the more it's going to turn into empowerment, Right now, for a lot of us, is disempowerment. That's what's happening. We're allowing our self-story and our limiting emotions to create this internal disempowerment, right? So we're not showing up as the best version of ourselves. We're not going into situations in different, arenas confident. Nah, we're going in with a very limiting self-story, very disempowered. But when we have that quick glimmer of hope to actually put ourselves out there and try to do something, there's no way, because internally I'm disempowered. I can't even believe in that thought. I can't even believe in the vision, right? But the moment you start to shift your gaze inward and do that internal work, you're going to start to realize that you're empowering yourself. And that's a beautiful thing right there. That's a beautiful thing. So to bring us back to the analogy, right? If your self-story is like a thermostat in a house, we can't just open the windows. We gotta shift. We gotta reset the thermostat. So we gotta reset the self-story, because no matter how many windows we open or whatever we try to do, the thermostat is going to pull the temperature back to whatever it's set to. That is its job. So if your self-story is set to, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, no matter how hard you try to just get into healthy relationships or show up authentically, whatever it is, that internal emotional signature, that internal self-story is going to bring you back to baseline every single time. So we have to become aware of it. And we got to start to make the necessary shifts. It says you don't escape your story, you rewrite it. That's so true. You don't escape your story, you rewrite it. So many people have such a limiting self-story that they're in this constant state of trying to escape their lives. There's no such thing as escaping your life, because in order to escape your life, you have to escape yourself. You're never going to escape yourself, ever. And that's the hamster wheel people get on, is this constant state of avoidance, trying to avoid dealing with the things they need to deal with, trying to avoid facing their emotions, trying to avoid facing that internal limiting self-story, trying to avoid facing those subconscious beliefs, trying to avoid that uncomfortable conversation, trying to avoid letting go. You're just avoiding. You're running away from yourself. How are you ever going to cultivate alignment and authenticity and peace if you are constantly running from yourself? It just don't work. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a step back. We're going to embrace our journeys with a grain of salt. And we're going to keep on growing together through this conversation. Come on. A practice for point number 1. Write down your current self-story in one paragraph. Then write a second paragraph describing the version of you who already lives in the desired reality. Read the second one every morning and night as if it's already true. This is huge. The first step is let's become aware of what is the self-story that's running on the program right now. And if I don't know, let me sit with myself, right? Let me sit with myself. I heard an amazing word. I think it was yesterday. I was listening to a podcast with Dr. K on it. Not the Dr. K that I've had on my podcast. His name is Dr. Koshal. The one that I was watching, I forgot. I don't know his full name because he literally goes by Dr. K in everything. But he's an amazing psychiatrist, an amazing guest on podcasts. He's elite. He said that the first step of cultivating self-awareness is being able to sit in boredom. And it hit me so deep because it's so true. Like, self-awareness is cultivated through boredom. And if you can learn how to shift your relationship to boredom, it will revolutionize your life. Like, when you stop looking at boredom and not doing anything as something is wrong or I can't or this is just uncomfortable, and you start viewing it as an opportunity to deepen your self-awareness, an opportunity to just be with yourself and cultivate stillness, it's going to change everything. And when you start, going into those moments and seeing throughout your day, maybe you're in a situation, you're not really doing anything, you're bored, but rather than being so quick to need to grab something or need to do something or need to stimulate yourself, you're okay with just sitting there and analyzing your thoughts, feeling your emotions, listening to that internal dialogue. That's how you cultivate self-awareness. That's how you become aware of the self-story that is driving your vehicle. That's how you step into the position to which you can actually have agency over your life and start to shift into a more authentic version of yourself. So I just wanted to say that, but it's deep. But it's a great practice, right? Write down the current self-story. And then below that, let's write a story that aligns with where we're trying to go and who we're trying to be. Let's write that story. And then let's start to say that to ourselves every single day until it becomes our new norm. And we're going to keep doing it until it becomes our new norm. Because that's how much we care about our growth. That's how much we love ourselves, right? That's how much we're committed to the process of becoming the most authentic and aligned, highest version of us. Let's move on to point number 2. I also just realized that might have been one of the longest point number 1s we've ever had on this podcast, if not the longest. Because I was looking at the time just now. I'm like, hold on. That was a long time we just talked. And then I realized we only on point number 2. But it's how it be sometimes. That's how it be sometimes, right? I come into these, speaking of neutrality, I come into these sessions from a very neutral standpoint. I have no idea how long it's about to be. I don't know how long I'm gonna spend on each point. Sometimes I don't even get all the way through, right? There's been certain podcasts where I've had like 5 or 6 points, and I may only have done 4, or maybe I did 5 and was like, I'm not gonna do the last one, whatever it may be. But I just come in and I let the energy in the room cultivate whatever is meant to be cultivated, So, point number 2, creating coherence with your thoughts and emotions, like we were just mentioning in point number 1. Living authentically and aligned requires coherence, a harmony between your thoughts and emotions. Your thoughts send the signal into the field, right? So think of your thoughts as think of the field as like Wi-Fi for our reality, right? We have this invisible field that we can't see, but it connects everything, right? And this is a scientifically proven thing. Like, it's in quantum physics. They've discovered that there's literally an invisible field that connects everything energetically. So profound, because now it explains why we attract certain things into our life. Because there's literally an energetic field. We are energy. As far as like us as spiritual beings, we are energetic beings, but everything around us is also energy. So it literally is a reality in which you attract things based off of your vibration, based off of your frequency. And your vibration and frequency is cultivated through your emotions, your thoughts, and your actions. It's deep. It's deep. Your self-story. So your thoughts send the signal into the field, but your emotions are what pull experiences back into your life. So think of thoughts as outward and emotions as inward. And by outward, I mean, okay, think of your thoughts as casting the net, right? When you're fishing, you're casting, and then your emotions is you pulling it back, right? Whatever's in there, you're pulling it back. So this is why, right, you can have a thought of, or you can have a vision or a dream, right, of the life you're trying to live, the thing you're trying to do, whatever it is, the new endeavor, the new, content created, whatever it is, I don't know. You can have a thought, a vision, a goal, a dream. And for a lot of people, we're having those thoughts, but there's a disconnect, because look, we've said you have this thought, but then your emotional home is not aligned with that thought, right? You feel unworthy, you feel shame, you feel guilt, self-judgment, self-condemnation, lack. Nah, I can't do it. Nah, it's not for me, right? This is the importance of that coherence. This is the importance of that coherence, because your emotions pull things back into your life. You could cast out a good thought, and get back something totally different. And most people, oh my gosh, most people constantly praying, constantly wishing, I want this to happen, I want that to happen, I want this to happen. And things never seem to go their way. And what do they think? I'm just not blessed. Things just never work out in my favor. I just didn't get the lucky end of the stick. No, we not going to accept that story or not going to do that. Let's figure out what emotional signature we are continuously casting out into the field, because that is going to dictate what we are getting back. You cannot cast out unworthiness, cast out lack, cast out scarcity, and attract abundance, attract, unconditional love, attract worthy experiences. It just don't happen. And this is what creates so much friction and frustration in people's lives. I have been praying, I have been wishing, I can't even speak enough about the things that I've been wanting to experience. And even I'm trying to do the right things physically. Things still seem to not be working out. We got to look at the emotional signature that we're casting out as well. We have to, because it literally is going to dictate what you attract back into your life. Literally, it's deep. Dr. Joe Dispenza emphasizes that to create a new reality, you must think greater than how you feel. Your emotions are often tied to the past, to old memories, old relationships, old wounds, old disappointments. If you don't rise above those emotions, your body will keep recreating the same reality in order to feel what it's familiar with. Wow. This stuff to me is it gets me goosebumps in a good way. Like, I just love this stuff because I see it in my life so much, and it's so profound. Like, it's so profound to me. But if you don't rise above those emotions, your body will keep recreating the same reality in order to feel what's familiar. So if you are operating from a place of guilt, shame, lack, fear, scarcity, all of these, greed, all of these low vibrational emotions, because your body literally gets conditioned and programmed to feel this way, and it craves predictability, your body is going to keep on recreating similar experiences and situations that make you feel those emotions, because your body craves familiarity. Do you guys understand how profound that is? If I have been living in guilt and shame and unworthiness for so long that it's become my emotional default, then my reality is going to be structured in a way to where I am continuously feeling those same emotions. I am continuously getting involved with people that create those emotions. I am continuously getting involved in situations that create those emotions. I am continuously ending up in outcomes that create those same emotions. And it's a cycle, and we don't even realize we're creating the cycle. Yo, it's deep. We are the ones creating that cycle, and we're wishing and hoping for something outside of us to come and save us from that cycle, not realizing we are the ones creating the cycle, which means if we're creating the cycle, then we can create a different cycle, and we can break that cycle. We can do that, and that's where empowerment comes from, and that's where community is needed, and that's where this community is for you. We are all in this together, all at different phases and different parts and different seasons in the journey. But through it all, we are connected. Through it all, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, trying to figure this thing out for the first time. Through it all, we are not walking alone. And that's the beauty of community. But understand, I'm right here with you. That's why this stuff is so profound. It's so profound. It's so profound to me. It's just, I can't speak enough about it. I can't speak enough about it. Most people try to change their life while staying emotionally attached to their past. They think new thoughts but feel old feelings. They want a new beginning but are still attached to the emotions of the breakup, to the betrayal, to the disappointment, or the failure. As long as your emotional body is tied to a past experience or person, your energy remains anchored in the past, and life can only reflect that back. I'm going to just read that one more time. I'm not even going to explain. I'm not even going to elaborate on it. I'm just going to read it. Most people try to change their life while staying emotionally attached to their past. They think new thoughts, but feel old emotions. They want a new beginning, but are still attached to the emotions of the breakup, of the betrayal, the disappointment, or the failure. As long as your emotional body is tied to a past experience or person, your energy remains anchored in the past, and life can only reflect that back to you. Wow. Wow. And this is where thinking greater than how you feel comes in. Let's dive into that. Thinking greater than how you feel is the skill of declining the habit of being yourself. Sounds so, counterintuitive, right? It sounds so contradictory. Declining the habit of being myself. What does that even mean? That doesn't sound like it's a benefit. But, we'll explain. So thinking greater than you feel is the skill of declining the habit of being yourself. The habit of being yourself. When you want to change, that means you want to step from the version you are into a new version. So when we talk about declining the habit of being yourself, the version that you're in right now that you want to step, or you want to shift or step away from, that version of you has programming, conditioning, habits, thoughts, emotions, certain things that have been on cycle. When you want to become a more aligned, authentic version of yourself, it's going to require you to decline the habit, the habitual patterns of that version. So when that version of you, when you're trying to grow and you feel the emotional pull to go back to shame or guilt, or you feel the limiting self-story, right? Or you feel the urge to react in an old way, it's the ability to say, let me take a step back. I'm not going to act out of that. I'm not going to fall back into that emotional cycle. I'm not going to cling on to that limiting thought. You're literally choosing something different than what's normal, right? That's what declining the habit of being yourself means. When you've reached a point where you're like, I don't want to be this version of me anymore, we have to decline, right? We have to start saying no to the things that this version had us saying yes to. Man, that's good. We got to learn, right? When you want to change, we have to learn how to start saying no to the things that the old version of ourselves said yes to. We got to learn how to say no to that. That's what declining the habit of being yourself means. It means choosing a new emotional response, even when your body wants to go back to the emotion it knows. It's the moment you stop letting a past experience dictate your current identity. When your thoughts consistently rise above your emotional past, your body begins to learn a new emotional baseline. We've talked about it. That friction you feel at the beginning is temporary. The friction you feel when you want to think greater than how you feel, right? So you're thinking positive thoughts. You're thinking about a vision. You're thinking about the best version of yourself. But the emotions ain't aligned, right? You're still feeling the guilt, the shame, whatever it is. It's the ability to focus more on the thoughts in the future of where you're trying to be than the outdated emotional signature. We're not acting out of those emotions anymore. And what's going to start to happen is you're training your body that, hey, that's not what we do anymore. This is what we do. And at first, your body's going to be like, no, this is what we do because this is what we've been doing. So there's going to be some disconnect. but you keep showing up. You keep staying consistent. You keep working with yourself. You're going to slowly start to teach your body that, hey, this is what we do now. And eventually your body's going to come with you. And now you have some coherence between how you're thinking and feeling. And boys, girls, ladies, gentlemen, get ready. Get ready, because when that coherence hit, man, man. But remember, the journey is the reward. Every facet, every phase, every stage of the journey plays a part. We don't skip over any. You can't. There's no getting to the coherence without going through the friction. There's no going through the friction without cultivating awareness. There's no cultivating awareness without leaning into stillness and boredom, right? It all connects. Y'all see this. It all connects. We're not stepping over. And that's the beauty of this journey, right? That's the beauty of where we are, right? Like I said, all of us are at different phases of our journeys. All of us are at different phases of our journeys. But understand, every phase plays a part in the totality of you. And this is the importance of not falling into comparison. A lot of times, without even realizing it, we're judging our phase 1 to somebody's phase 4, and we're wondering why we don't feel worthy. We feel like we're not growing. We're not feeling inadequate. We're not feeling adequate. Yeah, if I'm judging my phase 1, when I was in the hospital, when I was going through my depression, anxiety, all that stuff, medications, bipolar, if I was judging that phase 1 to, I'll use me right now. If I was that version of me judging where I am now, right? Let's say I wasn't, obviously I'm a different person. But if I was there judging myself, thinking it should look how I look right now, where I was, well, I'm setting myself up for failure. I got to learn how to give myself grace and understand that, hey, when I see things in people that inspire me, let me not allow that to turn into comparison and then making me feel like I need to be where they are now. No, you're exactly where you're meant to be. Embrace where you are. Make the most of it. Understand that through that, you're going to grow into even better places, even better phases, right? But embrace every facet of the journey. Embrace every facet of the journey. An analogy for point number 2, for the coherence between your thoughts and emotion. An analogy. It's like trying to fly a hot air balloon while there's still weights attached to it. The balloon wants to rise, but the weight keeps it close to the ground. Your past emotions are the weight. Letting them go is what helps you, the balloon, actually lift. All right, a lot of us have the thoughts that, man, if I was a balloon, like if I was a hot air balloon, I have the thought, man, I want to fly. I want to soar. I want to be in the sky. Right? But why don't we? Because we're still being anchored down to the ground by these past emotions, these outdated emotions. Right? So we have to understand, hey, this emotional home, this emotional signature that we've been living in, this can't go with us where we're trying to go. This is not going to help us fly and soar to those new heights. Nah. It says when the emotion from the past is greater than your vision for the future, the past will always win. That's huge. Thinking greater than how you feel. This is why it's so important to have a vision for your life. So many people don't have a vision. They don't have, a best version of themselves. They don't have goals and things that they're actually trying to do. So if you don't have nothing to look forward to, where does that leave you? Looking back, right? Because even being present, right? You're not even able to be present because emotionally you're still tied to the past. You're still living in the past. That is why people's lives become so redundant. Like they're just living on this habitual cycle over and over again for years and years and decades. Because they're literally allowing an outdated emotional default, emotional baseline to continue to create the same reality over and over and over and over again. The same reality can show up in a multitude of different ways, different people, different experiences, different locations, yet you're still getting the same exact results, the same exact experiences, the same exact emotions. We don't want to live like that. We do not want to 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line look back and realize that we have just been living a life on repeat over and over, never putting ourselves out there, never actually figuring out who we are, never having clarity within, never having inner peace, never actually shifting the internal narrative, never actually tapping into the power that we have within ourselves. Nobody listening right now, me included, wants to end up like that, wants to live a life like that. So we're not going to. Believe that. We're not going to. A practice for point number 2. Close your eyes for 2 minutes. Visualize the version of you who is free, emotionally, energetically, mentally. Feel the emotions of that version now. Peace, excitement, gratitude, empowerment. When an old emotion tries to pull you back, simply say not anymore and return to that elevated feeling. I saw the most change in this area, especially with my emotions and tapping into elevated emotions, meditation. Visualization and meditation, those two things. And that's what Dr. Joe Dispenza preaches, and that's when I got first put onto it. And that's what I'm gonna always preface and push people towards, is learning how to, starting to step into meditation and visualization, because there's a million different types of meditation. There's a million different ways to meditate and visualize. So you got to figure out what works for you. But for me, it was just so life-changing. And it's what creates the ability to actually do these things, right? How are you ever going to shift your emotional state if you're not ever pausing your life and just sitting with yourself and becoming aware of your emotional state? If you're just waking up, grabbing your phone, going to work, doing this, going to school, being around people, same thing every day, just going. When are you ever taking time to just be, analyze, and then shift? You're never even giving yourself the space to tap into a different emotion because you're just going all the time. And that's the tough part about the society we live in, right? Because we live in a very materialistic, capitalistic society. So everything revolves around, money. You got to make sure your bills are paid. If you got family, you got to make sure family good, kids, whatever it is. You got responsibilities, jobs, school, task, right? Like, that's the society we live in. So it's incredibly difficult. It's very, very, hard to maneuver this way in this society. It can be done. It will be done. We're going to do it together, right? But this is the importance of giving yourself grace and also having compassion and empathy for other people. A lot of times when we start to grow, we don't even realize that we can start to, get on this high horse and start to look down at people at where we once used to be. That's not the point of growth. You're not put here to grow into better versions of yourself so you can look down at people. You're put here to grow into the best version of yourself so that you can put a hand down and help somebody up. I say all that to say, like, we have compassion and empathy for people no matter where you are on the journey, right? And also learn how to give yourself grace when you're trying to navigate these things. You want to shift your emotional state. That's going to take time. You're going to have days where you feel like you have completely went back, right? You feel like you've completely been pulled back into the past because of the way you've been feeling and stuff. We give ourselves grace for those days. We reflect, right? We have that internal dialogue. Then we take the next right step, right? Maybe I need to go to the WAGOS podcast and just get some encouragement, get some perspective, right? Tap into a certain episode that really hit me in the past. Whatever it may be, but we give ourselves grace in this journey and we keep taking steps and we keep trusting in the process. Things are going to be okay. Things are going to be okay. Point number 3, relationships mirror your beliefs about connection, right? Relationships, this is huge. We don't even talk enough about how our self-story influences our relationships and how our relationships influence our self-story. We're going to touch a little bit on that right now. Relationships don't just reflect who we are. They reflect what we believe we deserve. The people we attract often match our internal patterns, our self-worth, our expectations, our emotional wounds, etc. If you believe relationships are always unstable, you tend to attract instability. If you believe you're too much or not enough, you attract partners who confirm that belief or relationships that confirm that belief. So true. So true. If you believe, if internally in that self story, in that internal dialogue, when it comes to relationships, you have a self story about relationships that relationships are always unstable, you will literally attract instability. Because remember, your brain is going to filter out anything that contradicts what you believe. So if you believe subconsciously, for a lot of us, because these aren't conscious thoughts, but unconscious. But if you believe deep down that relationships are just unstable, or I'm just too much in relationships, and you truly believe that, you're going to attract people into your life that affirm that belief. I promise you. This is where so many of us get messed up. We live in a society where if something goes wrong in somebody's life, our first reaction as a society is to look externally for the problem. It's that person's fault. It's this thing's fault. That's the reason that this happened. That's the reason I am the way I am. When you get to a place to where you can start taking the stance of always going to yourself first, self-awareness, self-reflection, it's going to change everything. You keep attracting a certain type of person or a certain type of attribute in a relationship, right? Toxicity, abusive, cheat, lack of emotional stability, lack of communication, right? These things that you keep feeling are common in the relationships you keep attracting. Most people, they see these things and they blame the other person. They don't change anything about themselves and they just think it's the person's fault. Oh, I just need to go to somebody new. And I'm not saying that you can't meet somebody that doesn't elevate you and help you to grow and change. I'm not saying that that's not possible, because it is. But for majority of people, if you're not open to changing, you won't. And what's going to happen is, if you keep focusing on always thinking the other person is the problem, you're never going to change. Then you're going to become very, very bitter and resentful towards relationships as a whole. That's how people get to these places where they say all men are this, all women are this, all relationships are trash, or the dating world is just horrible, or it's like, whoa, bruh. Maybe for you it is, because that's the internal belief you have. We're not abiding by that. We're not going to live in that truth. Why would we do that? But for that person here, and this is the deep part about truth, right? A lot of people talk about, oh, there's only one truth, or there's a multitude of different truths, whatever it is. Let me tell you this. In your life, the only thing that is true is whatever the subconscious mind believes to be true. That's the truth that you're going to live. I don't care about nothing else anybody says. If your truth internally is you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you're not lovable, you just can't, I'm not good enough, I'm wretched, I'm ugly, or whatever it is, if that's what your internal belief system is, that is your truth. And I promise you, your reality will reflect and affirm that truth back to you. So you have to understand, the only thing that's true, truly, in everybody's life individually is whatever the subconscious mind believes to be true. This is the importance of understanding what beliefs and internal self-story am I cultivating, and do I have and hold within myself. I need to figure this out, because if I don't, I'm just going to be living by chance, not by intention. We don't want to live that way, y'all. It says your emotional home determines the kind of relationships you're drawn to. If your emotional home is chaos, stable love feels foreign. Before I even go, I was just talking to my mom about this. If your emotional home and how you grew up, right, as far as like how you cultivated your emotional default or emotional baseline was chaos, instability, stable, grounded love will feel foreign. And if you don't have the awareness, because our bodies crave familiarity, This is where sabotage comes from. You will sabotage a good person or a good relationship literally because they're not a match emotionally. And where you are emotionally is still in chaos and still in instability. Somebody could come into your life who isn't chaotic and who is bringing stable love. You will sabotage that because it feels so unfamiliar to what you're used to. Why do you think we see it so many times? People stay in very, very abusive or toxic or limiting relationships. From the outside, you're like, how are you still with that person? Why are y'all still together? Fam, because on top of all of that stuff we're seeing, it's a match emotionally. And that is the most powerful thing when it comes to the relationships you're cultivating. People will stay with people who are hindering them, hurting them, abusing them, literally because it feels familiar. This is, oh man, this is heat. This is deep. This is deep. If your emotional home is abandonment, then emotional inconsistency will feel familiar to you. And then this is where we're getting into a whole different side. Do not confuse familiarity with right. A lot of people think, oh, well, it just feels right. No, it feels familiar. But I promise you, when you really take a step back and you look at it from a neutral standpoint, it is not aligned with where you're trying to go and who you're trying to be. But because we don't have the awareness and understanding of these things, we just get caught up in all of these different situations and relationships, and we don't understand why all this stuff is happening. So many people confuse familiarity with, oh, this is right. No, it's just familiar. And a lot of times what feels familiar isn't actually what we need. It isn't actually what's aligned. It just feels familiar. And because we cling so much to familiar territory, we end up staying with people or doing things that do not align or serve us or help us be better just because it feels familiar. Nah. And then it leads to this. You aren't crazy for being attracted to certain patterns. You're just drawn to what your nervous system recognizes. That's why, and I love this conversation we're having right now. Because I feel like there's people with me right now listening or watching where we're together right now mentally. Like when I'm speaking this stuff, you're able to picture certain things people have said or people have done in your own life where you've seen how this has come out. But now that we have the understanding and articulation to speak it, it's like it makes sense. But you're not crazy for being attracted to certain patterns. I mean, for me, I've seen it so many times. I've talked to certain people. Specifically, for this one, I'm going to specifically talk about women that I've talked to, like had, good relationships with, and we've had conversations. Because that's something in my life I do hold very dearly. Like, I for lack of a better term, I pride myself on having very healthy, real relationships with women that are not anything past just trying to connect and get to know each other. For me, I value perspective. I value learning from people. I value opening myself up and really hearing different, ways of living and how people experience different, relationships and stuff. And for me as a man, like something that's helped me tremendously, especially with relationships and women, is learning from women, getting to know them, sitting with them, actually listening and asking them questions about their past relationships and what they've seen work and what they've seen haven't worked, stuff like that. So I digress on that point because I don't want to lose my train of thought here. But I've seen so many times where I'd be talking to some and the conversation of like, I don't know why I keep going back to this, or I don't know why I always get drawn to these type of attributes. Am I crazy? What's wrong with me? Right? Those type of things come out. You're not crazy, and there's nothing wrong with you. It literally is just what your nervous system recognizes as familiar. That's it. You're just doing what's familiar to you. You're not crazy for doing what's familiar. No. But where we start to step into the realm of crazy is when you become aware, this is what's happening, and you decide not to change. You're not crazy, but it's like, hold on. We got to take a step back and look, like, what we doing, bruh? What we doing? But we have grace because everybody's at different points, right? Not everybody's going to change at the speed or the pace you want them to change at. That's okay. That's totally fine with us. But do not confuse familiarity with what's right. Please. This is a huge, huge key. A lot of people, especially relationships, don't confuse familiarity with this is right. To attract healthier relationships, you must elevate your self-worth. Not in a superficial way, right? Not, oh, I need to get more cars, more money, no more bags, more clothes. That's not what I'm talking about, elevating your self-worth. I'm talking about in a real internal way. You must become someone who can both receive and sustain the kind of love you want. The universe will not give you a partner you are energetically unprepared to hold. You attract what you want. You attract what you are, not what you want. You must become someone who can both receive and sustain the type of love you want. A lot of people want love that they are not a match for internally. A lot of people want love that they are not a match for internally, right? And man, it just goes to this analogy. You cannot pour 5 gallons of love into a 1 cup capacity of self-worth. You have to grow your capacity first. A lot of people are trying to pour 5 gallons of love into 1 cup capacity of self-worth, and they're wondering why things not working out. Bro, you have to grow your self-capacity first. You will miss out on so many opportunities and beautiful relationships because of the self-story and self-beliefs you are holding on to. Because remember, your self-story, your self-beliefs literally create a lens in which you interpret everything through. So if your self-story and your self-beliefs are limiting and not aligned with where you're trying to go, your reality is going to reflect that back. Your reality is going to reflect that back, right? Because you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. What you are, what you think, what you are, what you feel, what you believe. So be mindful of that. Point number 4, your relationships influence your self-story. The people you spend time with don't just influence you, they shape your internal environment. Every relationship carries an energetic tone. Some expand you, some drain you, some challenge you to grow, and some keep you tied to an outdated version of yourself. Relationships are like emotional ecosystems. When someone truly aligns, speaks life into you, and holds you to a higher standard, they water you, right? They strengthen the thoughts and emotions that align with who you're becoming. But when someone constantly triggers old wounds, doubts your growth, or pulls you back into familiar limitation, they wither you, reinforcing the emotional signatures you're trying to outgrow. This is the importance of relationships. When you figure out the type of person you want to be, the type of life you want to live, not only do I need to align my thoughts, emotions, and actions with that vision, I also need to align my relationships with that vision. I can't keep being around people who are literally the opposite of the life that I'm trying to live and expect things to just work out. Something has to give. Either the vision and the best version of you is giving, or the relationships. You got to make a choice, right? But understand this, though, like we said, there's more beautiful and aligned and expansive relationships waiting for you. But in order to step into those, you got to be willing to step away from the ones that no longer align. Even when it's people you've had years and years of staying in the game with, right? Years and years of relationships and knowing each other. Sometimes you gotta be willing to take a step. Every relationship either strengthens your nervous system or stresses it. When you're around people who are chaotic, inconsistent, or emotionally heavy, your body starts memorizing the chemistry of those interactions. Anxiety, tension, defensiveness. Over time, those emotions become your baseline. Let me finish this and then I'll get to that. On the flip side, people who bring peace, encouragement, curiosity, and growth create a totally different chemical environment in your body. They regulate you. They remind your system what safety and expansion feels like. That's why choosing your relationships is part of choosing your future reality. Choosing your relationships is part of choosing the best version of yourself. Choosing your relationships is part of choosing the vision that has been placed on your heart. It's all part of it. Relationships are so important. They either help uplift you or they contract you. They either water you or they wither you. They either expand you or they suppress you. Choose accordingly. This is why relationships are so important. If you're in a relationship with somebody or a group of people, you want to start growing. So that means you're starting to make changes in your life. You're starting to respond rather than react. You're starting to choose different things. You're starting to show up in a different way. But the people you're around or the relationship you're in, that person isn't doing it. Bro, eventually there's going to become such a disconnect to where either you have to stop your growth and come back to what feels familiar, or you have to be willing to let them go because they're not willing to grow with you. And because so many people create attachments to other people, right? They're not willing to let go of the attachment. So what happens is because they're not willing to let go of the attachment to that person, they literally stunt their own growth to stay in familiar territory. Nah. I don't think, We're just going to leave it there. Nah. You cannot create a new life if you stay surrounded by people who energetically keep you tied to the old one. A lot of people never grow because their environment reinforces their past. Even if you're doing the inner work, if you're constantly around people who doubt your change or emotionally trigger your old patterns, your body will automatically slip back into old emotional states that you're familiar with. Real transformation often requires stepping into environments and relationships that support the identity you're trying to build, not the one you're leaving behind. This is huge. Relationships. And if that means, if stepping away from a relationship or relationships means being alone for a little bit, it's okay. Because one, you're not alone. But two, that's such a vital part of the journey and the process. Like, it's so important that phase of where you got to step away from people and be alone for a little bit because you're growing and you're changing. I cannot tell you the importance of those seasons of our lives. So when you're in it, understand the heaviness and the weight that this season holds. Embrace it. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Embrace it. And understand it is temporary. There is not a single season that lasts forever. Not a single season that lasts forever. So understand it's temporary. And you're going to be okay. Your relationships are like the soil a plant grows in. A plant can have the right seeds, the right potential, and the right internal blueprint. But if the soil is dry, it's toxic, or lacking nutrients, the plant can't thrive. It doesn't matter how much potential the seed has. But when the soil is rich, supportive, and nourishing, the plant grows effortlessly. Your life grows or withers depending on the soil you plant yourself in. Your relationships. I love that. Your relationships are like the soil a plant grows in. A plant can have the right seeds, the right potential, right? All of this possibility within it. But if the soil is dry and toxic and lacking nutrients, it can't thrive, right? How many of us have all of this potential within us, yet the seed is being planted in the wrong soil because of the people that we're around? It can't grow. The seed that we have within us can't even grow to its fullest because of the people that we're surrounding ourselves with, because of the environments that we are continuing to stay in. Take it with a grain of salt. We've talked about situations, especially for me, when I was going through what I was going through. Majority of the time, I was in environments that I didn't have control over. I was forced into these environments. So There are going to be times, a lot of times, where you're going to have to be greater than your environment. That's part of change too. But all of these things help us to develop internal strength, resilience, perspective, awareness, depth, capacity, those type of things. So it's so important. But take it with a grain of salt, because there's going to be situations where you can't get out the environment. So we got to learn how to maneuver in it. But for the people that you can step away from relationships, you can step away from that environment, we got to be willing to do that if it's not congruent with where we're trying to go and who we're trying to be, right? Who you surround yourself with is who you become. Not by force, but by emotional absorption. That's good. So a practice. This is a practice for point 3 and 4, because they both had to do with relationships. Let's do a relationship audit. Take 5 minutes and write down the 5 people you spend the most emotional time with. Not just physically, but emotionally, right? Right? You could spend an hour with somebody, and then you could spend an hour with person A and spend 5 hours with person B. But you spent more emotional time with person A in that hour than you did in the 5 hours with person B, right? So really write down the 5 people you spend the most emotional time with, right? Next to each name, write either they water you, they wither you, or it's just neutral. Somebody like at work, we're cool, we're great, right? Whatever it may be, that's neutral. Then ask, would my future self keep, limit, or release this relationship? This gives you immediate clarity on which relationships align with the reality you're trying to create and which ones anchor you in the past and don't serve you, right? Let's do a relationship audit. Let's really figure out who we need to spend more time with and who we need to take a step away from. And point number 5, the last point of the day. This has been a long podcast, but I love it. The universe responds to who you are, not what you say. We mentioned this earlier, but I want to touch on this to end it all, because we talk about our self-story and how it creates our reality, right? The universe is going to give you back things that you believe to be true for you, right? It doesn't matter what you say. You could say, I want this, but if internally your self-story isn't that, you're not getting that back, right? Because you don't get back what you want, you get back what you are. Remember, you don't get back in life what you want, you get back in life what you are. Change doesn't happen because you want it. It happens because you become the version of you who naturally lives in that change. You can't call in new experiences while operating from old emotions. You can't receive peace while living in fight or flight. You can't experience healthy love while embodying unworthiness. Life responds to the energy you habitually live in. Your state of being, your emotions, your beliefs, your actions, your internal patterns, that is a broadcast. What shows up around you is simply the feedback. But understand, we are broadcasting. Like, this is the broadcasting center. We're broadcasting an energy out into the universe, right? Into the field, into the world. What shows up around us, what we get back, is simply just the feedback from that broadcast. We don't need to fight the feedback. We need to tune into the broadcast. What are we broadcasting out? A lot of people are getting into fights with the things that they're attracting, not realizing they're attracting it. Come on. It says, identity creates destiny. This is huge. When your mind, actions, and nervous system all agree on who you are, reality begins rearranging itself to match you. But when your identity is fragmented, when your thoughts want one thing but your emotions are tied to another, the universe receives mixed signals. Embodiment is what makes your energy consistent. Embodiment. This is the importance of aligning your thoughts and emotions and your actions with the highest version of yourself. Write on a piece of paper, best version of me. What does that person think on an everyday basis, right? What is the self-story of that person? What emotions is that person embodying on an everyday basis? What daily habits and actions is that person taking on an everyday basis? And my job is to take that and embody it in the present, one step at a time. The more you start to embody, the more you're going to start to see your reality shift. Because as you shift, your reality is going to follow you, right? Because remember, our reality is just a mirror of our internal state of being. So when our internal states of being starts to shift, bro, there's going to be a shift. An analogy for point number 5. You can't attract warmth by sitting in the cold wishing for heat. You have to light the fire first. The warmth comes after. That's manifestation in its finest. Most people think that the manifesting in this situation is the warmth, right? Oh, the warmth coming to me means I manifested the warmth. No, the manifested happened when you lit the fire. Remember, manifestation is an internal thing. When you shift internally, external manifestations are just going to happen because of the shift that you've made internally. It's not about focusing on the external, right? When people think about manifestation, they always think external. I want to manifest a car. I want to manifest, money. I want to manifest this. I want to manifest that. That you're focusing on the wrong thing. The manifestation process is internal. It's literally embodying the energy of the version of you that has the things that you want to attract. That's the manifestation. What you get back is just the feedback and the results of the internal manifestation. Understanding that gives me so much peace to know I don't need to go anywhere or do anything externally to move into a state that aligns with the life that I want to live. I can actually start to make shifts internally that can have a shift on my external reality and start to change the things I'm getting. That gives me so much peace. It gives me so much peace. Become the future now. Right? That's what embodiment is. Embodiment is about seeing a future that you want to live and then learning how to live in that future now, internally. So a practice for point number 5. Choose one behavior the future version of you does consistently. Reading, mindfulness, a healthier routine, discipline, gratitude, creativity, whatever it is. Going for a walk, waking up a certain time, journaling, I don't care. Commit to doing it every day for 7 days. This anchors the identity shift into your body. Just commit to one little act for the next 7 days to see what shifts happen if I just stay consistent in this one thing. Come on, y'all. Come on. So, understand you are not a passive participant in your life. You are the creator of it. Your story, your emotions, your identity, and the energy you choose every day all shape the reality you walk into. Nothing changes until you do. Not because you need to work harder or force anything, but because your inner world sets the tone for everything else. When you remember your power, when you align your thoughts and emotions with your future instead of your past, life begins to meet you at that level. You don't have to chase anything. You become someone things naturally move towards. That is the power of awareness, the power of embodiment, and the power of choosing who you want to be with purpose and intention. And that, my beautiful brothers and sisters, is going to do it for this week's episode. I love all of you. I appreciate all of you. And remember, most importantly, to take everything with a grain of salt. I will catch you guys next week. Deuces.